Welcome, everybody, to Sunday night's frequency meditation. I hope you've all had a good week. And before we begin tonight, there's something that's worth noticing that's going on. My friend Mas Sajidi, who some of you may know, he's actually the one that introduced me to frequency work. He's an amazing guy. He's also speaking on imposter syndrome this Wednesday night through his XI code session. So if you're interested in that, go to his website. And it's just very interesting because tonight that I'm doing on the imposter syndrome. And so when the same theme appears like this across different people at the same time, it reflects a coherence rather than a coincidence. So the same patterns becoming visible through multiple perspectives, which means you're not stepping into something isolated. You're into something already active. And we start sharing the same consciousness. So let's bring that into your own experience tonight. And perhaps just review the week. Maybe at some point this week, something worked. Maybe a response came through clearly, or a decision moved without effort. Maybe conversation, relationships, they just kind of unfolded without any sort of resistance. For a brief moment, there was no separation, if you like, between what happened and who you were in that moment, that precise moment. And the experience just felt complete without needing any sort of confirmation. But this is all very subtle. Then a shift followed. And that change, that shift didn't come from the outside. It actually came from within. As like a quiet correction appeared. A subtle doubt forms. And that what that does is it prevents a moment from remaining as it was in that purity. And that's where this begins. In imposter syndrome, it doesn't start in failure. Actually, it begins when success is not allowed to register. What's happening is that you're already operating at a different level, if you like, a different version of yourself, yet you continue to interrupt that moment through a version of yourself. Past version. So you're not trying to become that version, you're just preventing it, if you like, from replacing who you were. And in fact, for people with imposter syndrome, that the archetype is usually very, very successful, ambitious, creative, talented people. So their outside doesn't reflect what their inner messages are programmed. So just take a nice deep breath in. If your eyes are closed, open your eyes. Look at the environment around you, everything outside of your body, that external environment. Look at it. That's reflection. And then close your eyes and come into that inner environment. And just notice through the meditation, if you can, how that inner environment changes. Not from what I say or you getting any aha moments, just it shifts. So let's go back to that moment, that success in whatever way it was, that it arrives without effort. Just carrying that sense of completion that didn't depend on any sort of valuation. Whatever your actions or your words, you just move through you without any sort of preparation, and the response in front of you meets with success directly. There's nothing to Nothing requires adjustment. Just that moment stand on its own. It's stable. It's clear. It's pure. And almost immediately settle, a shift begins. The body will demonstrate it. As you get more aware, you'll be able to fine tune and notice these body movements. Breath might shorten slightly, as if the body pauses before committing to what's just occurred. Or your throat can constrict enough just to hold back that full expression. Eyes narrow, focus becomes more fixed. And the intention moves away from direct contact into observation. That change in position alters the experience entirely. You start observing what happened. So what just happened is no longer lived as it occurred in the moment. It becomes something to assess, compare against what you already believe about yourself. So the moment, that success, whatever way it was, it confirms something new. Yet the identity refers back to something old. And the two positions they cannot hold at the same time. So just take a nice breath in. Notice your spine, you in your spine, and then your sphere, that center point behind your eyes. Just being here right now. Nothing to figure out. Everything will come to you, for you, when we stop trying to figure it out. So going back to our situation, recognition, it comes first, and then it's followed by doubt. And that order matters because it shows that doubt is not the signal of truth. It's a response that just restores familiarity. We love familiarity, even if it doesn't serve us. So the movement of that response is consistent. It's always turning back towards what's known, reframing whatever happened and reducing it until it fits that previous identity. Mm-hmm. So you're just not stepping in fully to the current version of you. And this feels like awareness, yet it functions as avoidance. And sometimes, for instance, receiving a compliment, not registering it, might appear as humility, but it actually more operates as a self-erasure. And this pattern becomes visible in the way your language is softened after it's already landed, or in the hesitation that appears just before a clear next step. There's that reduction of presence after that successful moment. Each of these actions, they prevent the moment from becoming that new reference point. So just return to that specific moment when something worked, and just allow it to remain exactly without modifying it, without replying about it, belittling it, doubting. yourself in it. Then just bring your attention to that second immediately after it completed. Feels what happens in the body as the shift begins, that self-doubt. So the moment didn't disappear, but you left it. Didn't stay in that current version. You referenced past version, another version. And the system responds with precision. So what changed in that moment? It wasn't the outcome, it was about the structure you're holding in place. A gap had existed between who you believed yourself to be and what you're capable of doing. So although your external environment reflected this capable structure and success, there's another structure that had its own belief of who you were. That gap between the two. And that gap between the two allowed you to position yourself as still developing, still approaching, so not really fully there. Actually, what's happening is easier to see than it first appears. So the moment itself is not the issue, because it already worked before anything else came in. What changes is the way it's being seen, your perspective. So instead of staying inside that moment, something shifts and begins to look at it from a position that existed before it happened. That's the difference. So the experience always remains the same, yet the perspective moves. Once that shift happens, it's impossible at the moment. It's no longer taken at face value. So it's filtered through that older understanding of who you are. That older version doesn't recognize what just occurred as something that belongs to it. So the self-doubt, the rereading, the messages, if I got found out, it's not really me. And it comes into our lives daily, very subtly. So from there, everything that follows kind of makes sense. Just breathing in again, coming into your spine, your sphere, here. Here, the version you are right now. So doubt doesn't arrive or appear randomly. It doesn't come before the moment. Doubt arrives afterwards, once the older version begins trying to make sense of something that doesn't fit within its limits. And doing that, it reshapes in the moment until it matches what's already familiar. So there's nothing's gone wrong, just the interpretation has changed. There's bringing in awareness of the current version you are right now, that you're rendering yourself from, which is dynamic, which is always changing. And although we might feel it's safe or the right thing to do is to keep referencing past versions, past experiences, it doesn't benefit you. And again, if you go back to the experience that before that moment, that there was still room to relate to yourself as someone who was actually getting there, not still developing, still not fully operate at that level. That space made everything feel manageable because it kept a distance between what you could do and who you truly believe yourself to be from that other perspective. So when something works cleanly, that distance, that gap disappears. And that's at that point the only way to maintain the previous identity is to reinterpret it, the moment itself. That's where the tension comes from, because there's now two things are being present at the same time. One's the reality of what just happened, and the other is the version of you that does not yet include it. So just stay with that without changing anything. You just see that. See it through the old version. Whatever the success was, or the forward, the expansion. And then how that self-doubt, how that's the old version interpreting it. Just notice that moment without having to change it. Let it just remain. You may even feel, again, maybe a slight tightening through your stomach, or a holding in your throat. Or like as if something's being paused before it can fully move. Your attention narrows, trying to focus more tightly as your mind's trying to resolve what it's seeing. So that response, it's not confusion, it's the older version of you trying to understand something that doesn't fit within it right now. And if the moment's allowed to stand as it is, that version, there's nowhere to place it. That's where we get the discomfort. It's not about the ability. It's not even about whether the moment was real. It's about what happens to the identity that can't contain it. Expansion, ascension. It's it takes one to navigate. always focusing on the limitation side of it, our existence, and the healing side of it. When you start to expand, lose identity, nothing to hang on to of past identities, it takes precision, impeccability. So it's just like here, navigating into that expansion without referencing past versions. So you're not doubting yourself when this happens, when this comes in. You're viewing that moment through a version, again, of yourself that no longer matches it. And once that's seen clearly, the pattern becomes really obvious, actually. The moment happens, the older version steps in, the interpretation changes, and then the experience is reduced until it's fit again. And the simplicity of this, as you notice that sphere, spine, when you start seeing it, become aware of what's happening, it makes it very difficult to continue doing it the same way. That's, I feel like, awakening awareness. And then there's even another layer to this. So it kind of explains why the pattern repeats so consistently. For many people, being fully seen hasn't always been neutral in certain environments, especially where hierarchy or other misogyny has been present. Standing clearly in what you can do has created friction or unwanted attention over time of where body develops. That softens what's visible before it becomes too strong. And then that response that happened maybe in the past, it can remain active even when those conditions are no longer present. So now when something works, the same movement appears, not because it's even required, but because it has become familiar. We love familiarity, even if it doesn't serve us. So the moment still seen through the same older frame, even though the situations change. And again, with this awareness as you breathe in, recognizing that is what begins to loosen it. You can step away from it. So let's come back to that moment again. Time instead of shifting perspective, remain where the moment already placed you before the interpretation. And just let that experience be seen from inside it rather than from a version of you that came before it. Just feel that. Notice how the body responds. There's no need to reinterpret anything. How the breath can move more freely. Shoulders settle. just that overall sense of pressure reduces without needing to be forced. Nothing changes in the moment itself. What changes is the position you're seeing it from. Once you're in that position with that awareness, that perspective, something becomes quite clear. You don't need to become that version. You just need to stop looking at the moment from the version that came before it. That's the shift. And once that perspective remains with the moment instead of moving back to the past, the need to reduce or explain, it just disappears. The experience stands as it is, and the identity adjusts to include it now. That's when you really see someone who has that real underlying confidence, authority, but it's wrapped in a humility. They're solid. There's no self-doubt, imposter syndrome. They step fully into who they are. So that voice that used to interrupt may still appear, but its timing now is very obvious for you. It comes after the moment. It doesn't define it. So once again that's recognized, it doesn't carry the same weight. It's no big deal. And with that, I'll leave everyone here, and I'll see you all next week.